welcome to Deep Dive on Data Recovery for Ransomware Events. My name is Fatima Kamal. I'm a Principal Storage SA. I work in the field helping customers build on storage solutions.
Hi, I'm Vivek Mishra. I'm a Senior Product Manager in AWS Data Protection, and I specifically work on platform areas which cover ransomware protection and recovery.
So in today's agenda, we will cover the state of ransomware and what we are generally seeing out there. We'll go over the best practices of protect, detect, and recover functions. We'll see how to apply this defense in depth strategy using a sample architecture. And the most exciting part is today's new feature that we are going to talk about. It's the new logically air-gapped vault in AWS Backup. So stay tuned. And let's get started.
Yep. So I think most folks now understand what ransomware are and how it affects organizations and the financial impact and the loss of reputation it can have if it's unmitigated. Ransomware has been a leading security problem since the early 2010s, where there are more victims and increasing ransom demands. Ransomware attacks have become more mainstream, more sophisticated, to the extent now they have even become commoditized as ransomware as a service, where affiliate programs are actually opening up ransomware tools to less sophisticated bad actors. If you look at the numbers, back in 2020, Gartner predicted that in the next 5 years, almost 75% of all IT organizations will face one or more ransomware threats. And the data still says that we're projecting towards that. Average downtime associated with a ransomware attack is over 3 weeks now, and with the total recovery cost, including the ransom payments, is close to $4.5 million. Additionally, organizations are challenged with increased regulatory compliance following cybersecurity best practices compliance, along with increased insurance demands. They're all leading towards rising cost.
So as it seems that ransomware is one of the biggest challenges in the industry, what I'm seeing is that now most of my customers they are looking for a multi-layered defense strategy, which includes enhanced monitoring of events, scanning for malwares, isolation of data, etc. Right? So we'll talk about some of these approaches that the customers can implement in this deep dive session.
So how do you approach this problem? It firstly starts by thinking about data protection as a whole, which is the process of safeguarding your business critical data from corruption, compromise, or a loss, and then having the capability to restore known good, trusted, and tested data to a functional state. But how do we get there? We at AWS and many of our customers typically start thinking about this data protection problem with the NIST cybersecurity framework. This framework has a set of guidelines for understanding and mitigating organizational cybersecurity risks and protecting network and data. It has become a valuable reference document across the globe, including US, and it has 5 main functions or pillars, namely identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, that end users and organizations can reference to build a proper cybersecurity defense strategy. Now, if you look at across the 5 functions, for the most part, now the focus is on the recover function because much of the emphasis earlier was on the other 4 pillars.
That's right, Vivek. That's a common trend that I'm seeing in the field, that customers are now focusing on building recovery strategies and putting a lot of emphasis on the recover, because let's say there was a zero-day event, right, which is becoming more likely, where backups are now targeted. So what if your backups are targeted and your backups are compromised? So which is why customers are now focusing on the recoverability or the recovery assurance of the data, right? So that's where we need to see how we can help customers protect their data.
Certainly. So today there are many AWS services and also partner offerings that align to this industry standard and can be employed to mitigate the risk of ransomware. In next few slides, we'll talk about a few examples and the best practices from AWS that you can certainly use. And we'll specifically focus on the 3 functions, which is protect, detect, and recover. So when we talk about the protect function, it essentially means that how do you put in the safeguards around all your critical assets? You can think of backups, you can think of encryptions, access policies, patching your system, all of those. And AWS Backup is one such service or an example that offers core data protection capability on AWS under this function. AWS Backup was released back in 2019 to meet the customer need to automate and centralize data management, where they could schedule their backups, they could control their retention periods, they could perform restores when needed, they can do all of their compliance auditing and generate reporting, as well as perform centralized management of policies and monitoring to scale across their organization. Specifically from the perspective of ransomware protection, it provides immutable lifecycle policy protection via Vault Lock, and it provides isolation via cross-account backups, KMS-based encryption, separate access policies, and audit tracking.
So Vivek, you said that AWS Backup was launched originally in 2019, and we started off supporting a couple of services. How many services do we support today? And can you explain what is the best use case for our customers to adopt AWS Backup?
Certainly. So since its launch, we have expanded from a couple of services to now support 20 AWS services, including the most frequently used storage and database services like EBS, EFS, RDS, DynamoDB, as well as on-premises and hybrid applications such as VMware and Storage Gateway. And we are continuing to add support for more such stateful services as we go along. Now, to answer the second part, organizations today are growing their data exponentially. We're looking at the space, and organizations are continuously adding more data to their services. And to manage the protection of that data, they want something that is simple to use, natively available, provides that centralization, and then the breadth of services support is already there. So AWS Backup fits that bill well.
Thank you. So as we look into different layers of data protection, immutability is at the core of it all, right? So today we are going to see what are the other storage services that offer immutability to protect your data. Immutability is a process where you cannot modify, encrypt, or delete your data unless it is within a specified retention period. Here you have AWS Backup, and AWS Backup stores all of its recovery points in a logical construct called a vault. And by putting a vault lock on it, you can now protect your data from bad actors.
So, Fatima, what does a lock really mean? And are there other guardrails around it?
Yeah, so a lock essentially means that, it prevents anyone, even a person with a root access, from deleting your backup data before it's completed its lifecycle policy. And there are two modes to it, right? The compliance mode and the governance mode. Compliance mode is where even the root of the management account is unable to delete the data unless within the specified retention period. And in the governance mode, certain users with IAM permissions, specified IAM permissions, can now go and delete the data. This is a tool you could use to protect your data from bad actors. And Amazon S3 also provides immutability using object lock, and it offers compliance mode as well as governance mode to protect your data. So one of the latest feature launches that we had is, SnapLock on Amazon FSx for NetApp. What SnapLock does is it's a feature that allows you to protect your files by transitioning to a write once, read many state, and prevents any modification of those files unless within the specified retention period. So SnapLock also provides two modes. Primarily, you have the compliance mode and the enterprise mode. Compliance mode is mainly targeted for industry or government-specific mandates, such as SEC Rule 4F or CFTC regulations or the FINRA rule, etc. Right? And the enterprise mode is where IAM users can go and modify or delete the data. It's more for the data governance part. So Vivek, as we go through data governance and data compliance, can you how can we help our customers with data governance and compliance more?
Certainly. So another interesting example is a feature under AWS Backup, which we call as AWS Backup Audit Manager, or just simply BAM. So this feature provides the core reporting and compliance service. So what BAM does under the hood is that it does audit checks on your lifecycle policies via a collection of AWS configs. You can define certain frameworks within the service. You can include pre-built customizable controls, and then evaluate whether your backup activity complies with those controls. And then you can certainly set up automatic reports, which will give you all the insights that you need about the compliance status of all the services that you protect via those frameworks.
Sure. So Vivek, can you tell us what are some of those examples of those predefined controls? And can I find out if my core workloads are protected and encrypted?
Yes, you can certainly do that. You can find out if your core workloads are protected and whether they're encrypted. In fact, you can audit across all your workloads using tagging. So you can even focus it to certain core workloads that you care about. And then you can also audit whether you're protecting your workloads at a certain frequency, whether you're setting the right retention period. You can find out whether your resources are protected by a Vault Lock or not. And then it also allows you to see if you're protecting your workloads across regions, across accounts for your BCDR strategy to succeed. So as organizations scale, it becomes much easier to track their compliance using this feature as it happens.
All right. So let's look at, we have noticed that in 2022, the attacker dwell time has reduced significantly, right? And what does this mean? This means that organizations are adept at adopting all the 5 main pillars of the NIST cybersecurity framework. So this is an integration of AWS backup with an APN to detect malware on your recovery points. In this architecture, we have integrated with Elastio, one of the APN that can detect malware. It could be viruses that are going to infect your files, or it could be ransomware detonators that could encrypt your files. In this architecture, you have all of those recovery points landing on an AWS backup vault. Using the integration of EventBridge and Lambda, the selected recovery points are sent to Elastio for malware scanning. Once that scan job is completed, the results of it is sent to EventBridge. The artifact is stored in S3 for centralized reporting, and the findings of the publishing is published to AWS Security Hub. Once you have the list of clean recovery points, you could now use that to restore and recover your application in your ransomware recovery strategy. So let's see how to tie all of this together in a high-level architecture, right? So what we have here on the left is a workload account. A workload account is where you identify what are the critical assets that you would need to protect. Workload account can range from 1 to n, and then you have a delegated account. This is where you define your backup policies. You define your rules. What are the critical assets you need to back up? Are we setting up cross-account backup for this particular job? How long do we want to retain it for? All of these rules are defined in the backup policy in the delegated account. And it's essentially useful, let's say when your workload accounts span from 1 to thousands, right? So you can have a single policy to run the backups of thousands of accounts. When you have accounts in the order of thousands and you want to centralize the backup reports, you build a centralized reporting account where you congregate all of these reports onto an S3 bucket, you query and you visualize it, right? And then the key vault account. So when we are running cross-account backups, the keys, the KMS customer managed keys are shared across accounts to protect your backups. So you want to securely use it in a key vault account and follow KMS best practices. So in this architecture, you are saying that there is a cross-account copy that's happening from the workload account to the vault account. As these recovery points get landed on the AWS backup vault account, selected recovery points are now selected and sent to a forensic account for forensic analysis, typically malware scanning, using the integration of an APN. Once those findings are published, the selected recovery account is spun up where the clean recovery points are now used to recover your application from.
So Fatima, a lot of our customers are also very sensitive about cost. So basically in this architecture, what is the best cost-optimized way to scan your recovery points for malware?
Very good question, Vivek. So one of the things that we really want to do is not send all of your recovery points for scanning. That can prove costly in the long run. So what you want to do is you want to identify your critical assets. Which are the resources and recovery points you want to send for tagging? Once identified, you want to tag them appropriately, integrate them in the backup policy to ensure that once these are tagged, and as soon as they land, the workflow manager will detect based on that recovery tag and send the selected ones for malware scanning. So that is one important way through which we can reduce the cost of malware scanning. So Vivek, as we are seeing in this architecture, there's a lot of transfer of data happening, right? From the workload account to the vault account to the forensic account to the recovery account. And customers have always asked about how can we reduce the time required to copy across these accounts. Can you help us with that?
Sure. So I'll start with announcing a new release. So with the recovery theme today, we are excited to announce availability of AWS Backup Logically Air Gap Vault in preview, which is a new type of AWS Backup Vault that acts as an additional layer of protection to mitigate against malware events. So why does this launch matter? So customers have been telling us that they need greater isolation of their backups. They want them to be more accessible and want faster RTO when they're recovering their backups to meet their regulatory and compliance goals. The new Vault addresses these needs specifically. It is an immutable vault with vault lock applied by default in compliance mode. The backup data itself is isolated with encryption using AWS own keys, so an attacker cannot compromise the key, giving you the further protection from ransomware events. It allows secure recovery of application data across accounts, including cross-organization via new sharing model. So this is where your question gets answered, that you can recover to other accounts, and it is across your organization also. So you can always get to restore your data with a faster RTO. Your RTO goals are at that point met is because there is no other copy that you need to copy from one account to another account. There's a direct restore which happens across these two accounts. So a lot of our customers, if you look at it, are fully invested in terms of using current immutability capability with VaultLock and cross-account backups for ransomware protection, as well as for their business continuity and DR. And with this release, we want to raise the bar for protection and recovery. And if you're interested in learning more about this and want to try it out, feel free to send us an email at the below alias and we'll get you enrolled. So, Fatima, to summarize all this, we talked about a lot of things. Can you help tell us how customers can build all of this together using AWS services?
Absolutely. So let's tie it all together using different AWS services and features and build a defense in depth strategy. First, start with the basic. Leverage least privilege privileges permissions for using IAM roles. Second, create secure data corridors by implementing resource access policy, by ensuring that only specified recovery points are copied to the vault account or the bunker account. Always leverage immutable backups for your critical assets, right? So use SnapLock, FSx ONTAP SnapLock, or you can use Object Lock with S3 or Vault Lock with AWS Backup. Encryption is key. So as we copy your data across accounts, you want to ensure that those keys are protected. Follow KMS best practices. Make sure that you have, MFA for key deletion, or for API calls like key deletion. Implement a cross-account strategy with the new feature that Vivek talked about. Ensure that there is a cross-account strategy with digital logical air gap. Last but not the least, enable audit tracking with using AWS Backup Audit Manager. And with that, we are coming to the end of our session. Thank you for joining us on the Storage Day. Look at aws.amazon.com for more resources, and do talk to your account team to check out the newly launched feature today on logically air-gapped feature. Thank you.
Thank you all.